G'day there guys, it's your main man Markee, back at it again with another r/legal advice video. Now today's one's a kinda controversial topic, so I want you to sit back, relax, chuck another prawn on the barbie, and get ready for some good content. Rover.com dog sitter lost my dog, hindered his recovery, and damaged my contract in the process. I hired a well-reviewed Rover.com dog sitter to watch my dog on Friday in order for me to work on a contract out of the city. I dropped my dog off at the city's house at noon on Friday, and at 8:30 PM, he sends me a message letting me know that my dog had escaped. Something about his girlfriend and an open door. I break my work contract and race back to the city to start looking for him, and posted his info on several social media sources to get as much exposure as possible. I find out through Buns and Facebook that my dog was sighted about a kilometer away at 6:30 PM. So this guy waited several hours before letting me know that my dog was missing. I get into the city and start looking on foot. He informs me that he has called the police and Toronto Animal Services, and has ordered a set of missing posters to put up in the neighborhood through Rover. He then tells me that he has a bunch of friends and family canvassing the neighborhood looking for him. Great, right? This is where things get unpleasant. It is -10 degrees outside, or -10 degrees, and as it gets later and my search gets wider, I realize that I'm the only one looking for my dog. I call Rover.com repeatedly, and they say all they can do on their end is encourage the sitter to go out and look, but apart from that, their hands are tied. I get a tip from Facebook that a dog similar to mine was brought into TAS, but I need to call them for a more accurate description. So I in fact call the Toronto Animal Services when they open on Saturday morning at 8 AM, and discover that it isn't my dog. At that point, they inform me that they never received a missing dog report for my dog the night before, and that I would have to submit one myself, plus 12 hours after he went missing. This is the first confirmed lie from the dog sitter. I continue my search throughout the morning with no leads. I double back into the neighborhood and still don't see any missing posters or anyone else searching. I finally get a tip off to his location through Facebook and catch up with my dog at a park that he is semi-familiar with around lunchtime. This is after 17 hours straight of walking in -10 degree weather. I covered every street and alleyway in a 3 square kilometer area because I was scared to death that my dog was going to get hit by a car and or freeze to death. I couldn't stand the thought of going home without him. I speak to Rover.com again, and on a hunch, ask for the missing poster order number and location. It turns out they were never collected from the staples that printed them. So, this guy never had any posters in his possession and was never distributing them. I have them now as evidence. Emotions inside, is there any course of action that I can take to deal with this person? By lying about the search, the posters, and the Toronto Animal Services report, he delayed valuable search tools that I could have procured myself and used in the search immediately. I also lost $1,000 by breaking this work contract and have documentation to that effect. This guy really should not have any animal in his care, and pretending to go through the motions is worse than simple negligence, like leaving a door unsecured. I am at a loss for how to proceed, if at all. Edit, to clarify, I did eventually find my dog. He's safe, but it was a hellish experience. So someone says, your remedies are likely established in the Rover TOS, which I imagine says that the client agrees not to hold them responsible if a dog runs away. Correct. I can't touch Rover. However, I can go after the contracted dog walker. I don't know how it is in Canada, but in the US, you'd have an issue with causation in that the dog independently ran out the door. It's harder to prove negligence with something that has a mind of its own and can do things of its own accord. Then you're going to have an issue of providing damages. You can't really say definitively, had the guy not lied to you, that you would have found the dog any faster. That's fair. As the caregiver, doesn't he have a basic obligation to provide a secure environment for the dog? He also didn't disclose the inexperienced girlfriend as a resident interacting with the dog. That also makes the home environment less secure than he described before I dropped the dog off. I don't know guys, what's your take on this one? That is a hard issue for me. I feel like you should be able to sue him for that, but obviously I'm not the man in that guy's shoes. Anyway guys, on to the next post. Massachusetts, man that sold me a car called my insurance company and listed himself as a driver. Now they won't take it off until he verifies that we don't live together. He's blocked my number. I bought a car last year from a mutual friend that I didn't know well at all. Everything was fine until this past June, when he fell into some heavy debt. He gave me a call sometime around June, asking me to take out a loan for him, to which I refused. Red flag number 1 right there. After this, he began to harass and pester me for money. Was already paying way more than I should have been monthly for this car. I eventually just gave the car back, and that was that. I gave the car back mid-July and purchased a new one, a Nissan Altima, from a legitimate dealer. This morning, I received a call from my insurance company, Progressive, saying that this man has listed himself as a driver, costing me another $500. I calmly explained the situation, but they told me that unless he can provide proof that we don't live together, we absolutely do not, I still have to pay it. This is absurd. How is this allowed? The guy in question is obviously desperate and trying to get back at me for giving the car back, but how can I provide proof for someone else? This is in Massachusetts, and I have Progressive insurance. Update number 1. Okay, so a lot happened since I first posted. For starters, I should clarify some things. We signed an agreement that I would pay monthly increments for the title. Until the car, $30,000, was paid in full, he held on to the title. Initially, he said I would be under his insurance, but only a few days after I saw this guy was kinda shady and switched to my own. I did not have the car in my name, which is why I was able to give it back so easily. I just thought, screw this drama, I'll just get a new car. Today my adjuster happens to be out sick, but I reported this man to both the state and federal insurance fraud agencies. A representative of Progressive informed the man in question blatantly lied to my adjuster and told him we live together and that he drives my vehicle occasionally. I have only spoken to him a number of times, so this is certainly not true. I've been in contact with a representative of both Progressive and the insurance fraud agencies all morning, and am finishing sending in documentation as we speak. I'm expecting a phone call and will update soon. Update number 2. Not much has changed since the last update, except everything has been officially reported with all required documentation. Luckily, I kept all of the text messages between us, which I attached to the reports I filed. With my adjuster out today, of all days just my luck, it's a bit difficult to get this taken care of. After I settle this, because I'm not paying the extra $500, I will most definitely be switching providers. And hey, I was going to read some comments, but he pretty much answered every question that we could have asked there, so good on him. Thank you for that, OP. Florida. Neighbors, tenants, cutting down my magnolia tree without consent. Guys, would you believe it? It's tree law. And look, there's a Microsoft Paint diagram. Oh my god. Isn't that just exactly what you'd expect from a diagram? It's beautiful. Oh my god. So, I inherited this house and surrounding property from my great-grandparents when they passed away. This includes 2 rental properties, which my great-grandfather had been renting out for years to 2 families. Relations between the 3 families had always been cordial, even when my great-grandparents passed a few years ago and I became the new landlord, though the dads of both families are only a little younger than my grandfather, and I get the impression from our interactions they chafe a little bit. Their new landlord is a woman in her late 20s. But I figured everything is fine, because I've never raised the rent beyond what my great-grandfather set it at, and I always have professionals over to deal with any issues in the home within 24 hours of receiving a call from them. About 3 years ago, a local kid was messing around in my magnolia trees, and broke his leg. My homeowner's insurance paid the settlement to the kid's family, but just to be on the safe side, I had a surveyor come out and mark the property line for my lot. They also used the words plat, but I'll be honest, this isn't my area of expertise. versus the lots of the other 2 rental houses, that is, and then had a contractor come out and put a white PVC fence at the property line, just to ward off a repeat incident. Like some kind of fairy tale, the kids of the families that rent from me fell in love and have decided to get married. They wanted to have a block party, and the bride's father asked if I'd be okay with them decorating on my property as well, since it's part of the block. I admit I took decorating to mean things like hanging lights or other traditional wedding decorations, so I gave my consent. This morning I woke up to the sound of chainsaws and went outside to discover the parents of the bride and groom were cutting down my magnolia trees. Each tree is about 80 years old. This house was purchased as a wedding present for my great-grandmother, and they planted the magnolias there when they got married. If my great-grandmother had lived, she'd be turning 100 next year, and they were cutting them down because they didn't match the bride's aesthetic vision. I told them to stop immediately. I didn't give them permission for that, and I was going to call the police. They stopped, but when I went inside to grab my cell phone, they started up again. When I confronted them, I was basically told that since they're my tenants, I'd just be suing myself, so I could suck it up, buttercup. I admit, I was more than a little intimidated by a group of men with chainsaws. I went back in my house while they continued cutting and called the police, who in fact came out and told them to stop and gave them tickets, but they started up again once the police were gone. I called the police again, and they haven't come back out yet. I've also already called an arborist friend of mine, I'm a florist, to come out and do an assessment immediately. I called my insurance company as well, and they're gonna have someone call me back. But while I'm waiting, I thought I would ask here, can I sue them, or am I, as their landlord, liable for their actions against me? Needless to say, no one is getting their lease renewed, even though they've lived here for decades. Sorry if this is rambly, the trees hold a lot of sentimental value to my family and I, so this is very emotionally draining. Well, if you've kept up with r/tree law well enough, you know they might get a pretty penny for this. Anyway, quick question, if they lived there for decades, do they even have a lease, or are they month to month? If they are month to month, I'd hurry up and send a notice via certified mail. I don't think you'd have a problem suing them for the lost trees provided you get a good lawyer, but I would be worried about them damaging your property to spite you. And OP says, they still have a formal year-long leases. However, one of those leases would normally be renewed in September, so August 1st, I'm sending them the 30 days notice that I'm not planning to renew the lease. The other has a good 6 to 8 months left if I remember correctly. The paperwork isn't in front of me. Alright, epic time. Pay Tree It is here. Tree law guy here. I want to second and third some items that user Krieger81 and others have said. This is going to test your resolve. It will get worse before it gets better. These people have to go now. You obviously need a good lawyer. A good tree lawyer. Don't get discouraged if a lot of your attorneys don't know anything about it or don't want to take your case initially. I guarantee you will find someone who will salivate over the opportunity. God, I've been trying, this sentence is hard to say. This is a somewhat specialty aspect of law and litigators or wills, estates and trusts. Attorneys may not value the case as highly as someone who is well versed with this area of law. They, attorney skilled in tree law, likely has an arborist referred for you as well. Beautiful. With the tree's southern magnolia, Magnolia glandifloria, they can live 80 to 120 years and get to 80 plus feet tall. For comparison, a 10 to 15 foot tall pine tree, I know I always get that one wrong, is about $1,000 replaced, and ornamental with a 6 to 8 inch trunk, it's got the double there, $1,500. These are about as big as they can deliver. The values go sky high from there, especially for certain circumstances. Your trees could easily be worth $35,000 each if they're mature, shade-providing, sentimental, etc. Get a good tree law guy. You can't afford not to. And don't let anyone laugh at you about this. It's serious law and money, but you have to find the right people. On to the tenants. Pardon the semi-repetitive nature of that which is to follow. It comes from far too much experience with these matters. If anything, heed this advice. If this is how your first challenging interaction goes with these tenants of yours, which would be blatantly ignoring the police and continuing to destroy your property, can you possibly imagine how much stress and pressure you're going to be in for a long, long time? Noodle on that one. These people need to go. I can't tell you how many countless clients decide to not be the bad guy or try to smooth things over, or whatever they decide to allow these relationships to continue, when they should have cut bait long, long ago. Billable hours, I suppose. You need to remove these people immediately. Florida, somewhat uniquely, allows for what is known as a 7-day quit no cure notice. If non-compliance is in nature that the tenant should not be given an opportunity to cure it. This was criminal and they cannot cure by replacing the trees. Nor I doubt giving you the high 5 figures they are worth within 7 days. Examples of non-compliance, which are of a nature that the tenant should not be given an opportunity to cure, include, but are not limited to, destruction, damage, or misuse of the landlord's or other tenant's property by intentional act. Just think how nice it will be when this is all over to have the houses professionally cleaned, landscaped, get a new fresh tenant in there, and enjoy a peaceable and amicable, low libido, tenant relationship for years to come. The dust from all of this can settle at the same time. Get them out of there. Normally, you would serve them with written notice, intending to terminate the lease for non-compliance. Then you wait for them to do something stupid again, and you send them the 7-day notice. This case seems somewhat extreme, and I wager a good attorney could get a judge to agree that the initial notice and 7-day notice can be served back to back by the repeated and willful nature of the tenant's actions. This is tenuous, and your attorney can advise. In case you hadn't noticed, I'm strongly urging you to get these people out of your life. They clearly don't respect you. They will cause more damage, expenditures, and legal fees in the future. Your life will be happier for the short pain endured. Good luck. Now, some of you guys are purists about the comments, and I understand that, so I promise you from now on, if there's no interesting comments for the rest of these stories, I won't read them. Alright, and also you guys said you want an r/tree law. If there's good stories on r/tree law, I'll put a video up, I promise. But I'm gonna check it out first. Anyway, back onto the stories. Update to this story. I've received a number of messages begging for an update, but as it's only been a few months, I can only give a partial one, due to the ongoing legal issues. My attorneys have advised me not to divulge too much to anyone. Number 1. The day after my post, I called a good friend of mine who has been my go-to plumber since I inherited the property. We went to high school together, to ask for his help. He went to both houses the next day, saying that I had called him last week since the water bill seemed high and asked him to come look at the pipes. He went through the houses, surreptitiously taking pictures while inspecting the bathrooms, kitchen and water boilers, etc. for leaks. Apparently, while he was there, they made a bunch of comments about me that included racial slurs. TLDR, I'm biracial and do not pass for white, and such about how I need to learn my place. After he'd inspected both houses, he came back over to mine and gave me all the photos. These people sound really nice, by the way. Let's invite them over for Christmas. 2. I conferred with an attorney regarding evicting them, and 4 days later, both families were served with 7-day eviction notices. As expected, they blew up and started throwing rocks at my house, slinging more racial epithets in my direction. I'd always grown up being terrified of angry racist white men twice my size. I never realized how unbelievably pathetic they actually are until I watched them crying like babies while being hauled off by the police on the video cameras. 3. The bride made a very angry post on Facebook, followed up by standing in a church, small town, most of us go to the same church, during prayers and concerns, to beg for prayers for her family because our landlord is evicting us, all because she's jealous that I'm getting married. The pastor, feigning innocence, said, I thought she was evicting you all because your father and the groom's father cut down my great-grandmother's prized magnolias. Hardest game of you laugh, you lose I've ever played. Still proud I survived. 4. According to the arborists, yes, plural, though my friend came out and did an assessment, my attorney for the suit over the trees advised selecting someone who isn't so close to me for the paperwork we'll submit to the court, based on the number of trees cut down and the number of trees damaged beyond repair, and how old/well tended to those trees were. The value of the trees alone is more than I could sell all 3 houses for in the current housing market around here. Then the attorney started talking about how the damages are multiplied, and let's just say I would be quite happy with half that number, but I know when to zip my lips, so I let my attorneys handle the negotiating. 4. They did in fact destroy the houses as best they could. I have enough savings/inheritance left that I can live without the rents for a while, so I'm using it as an excuse to have both houses renovated since they haven't had major renovations since well before I was born. 6. The bride and groom got married and had their reception in the church basement instead of the cul-de-sac. They had to cancel the honeymoon to spend money on legal fees. Am I a bad person for being amused? 7. Hurricane Michael just gave me some wild thunderstorms. Thankfully passed over us with the worst of it. 8. My boyfriend of 7 years proposed. Finally, god dang. Other than that, you'll have to wait until the eternally slow court system process though. I do want to take a moment to thank you all for thinking of me, and for being so helpful with your advice, with what was a terrifying ordeal at the time. I'd never really stood up to my elders like that before, and it was comforting to know that not only did a gaggle of internet strangers have my back, but there were resources and protections in my community as well. Hip hip hooray for r/tree law. Alright, now on to some more unsettling content. What the heck is even going on? 9 says, my husband has been secretly recording me and us. What can I do? California. Besides leave, of course, but any advice on how to do that would also be appreciated, if that's okay to ask here. So my husband and I have been married for 2 years. We have a newborn baby. I just found out that he's been secretly recording me in the shower, on the toilet, in other private situations, as well as recording us having sex and then uploading them to various porn sites. Some of his porn site content is behind a paywall, so I assume that he's making money off of this. I was never made aware and didn't consent and would never consent to something like that. To say I'm horrified would be an understatement. I will add that I tried to have a conversation with him about this, and he was extremely defensive, even with the evidence. Legally, what can I do? Is this a police matter, or something to discuss with a divorce lawyer only? If I can't get these removed, how likely is this to affect me going forward? There were no attempts to obfuscate my identity, and he gave my first name to commenters, not our last name though. So Reddit user 1211 says, in California, this is a police matter. You can report the crime along with whatever evidence you may have. It seems very likely you should consult a divorce attorney in addition to the police, particularly about finding any hidden assets in the divorce. Durspinny says, this is a police matter if you choose to make it one. Non-consensual distribution of intimate photos and videos is a misdemeanor in your state, and he may have committed other offenses in the process of capturing that footage. I would speak to a family law attorney first, however, and talk strategy. Criminal charges are appropriate if the police will bite. With internet publication, the police likely will. But a family lawyer can help you make decisions about divorce, custody, and the disposal of the revenue he's generated from this that a prosecutor can't handle for you. Having a strategy before you go to the cops is worthwhile. And now, mini update on my husband secretly recording me. Not much of an update, but I did want to let people know that I followed their advice and have consulted with a divorce attorney. I've been staying with my mum for a while I get my ducks in a row, which is not that suspicious to him as my mum and I are close. I'm trying to be careful because, truthfully, I don't know how he'll react, so I have been taking small steps. Baby is fine. I'm also compiling as much evidence as I can for the police to make a report. There's a lot more than I thought there, and frankly, I'm overwhelmed. Fortunately, most of the sites have been helpful, and the IT guy I hired to help me with the technical stuff has been nothing but empathetic, professional, and helpful, and that eases some of the pain. Thank you all again. I know this is not a huge update, but it's going to be a long process, and I wanted to say thanks. Well, I think that's a nice place to end the episode off today. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Tell me what you thought of it down in the comments below, and I hope that's not too much of a cliffhanger for you. I love your faces, and as always, I hope you have a good day, night, sleep, whatever you're up to, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.